We're back. We're back for another installment of consciousness. So, what are we going to focus on today? We're going to focus on the mirror dimension, which is a dimension that I heard it called this a couple days ago, and I was like, that's kind of a fun way to talk about what starts to happen in our realities. So, what is the mirror dimension? And when we are experiencing in the mirror dimension, what does that mean? There's a lot of times people will use mirror dimension. You'll see it in the dream world stuff. You know, a lot of people who do stuff on dreams, write books on dreams, talk about mirroring. You'll see it in the twin flames. You know, they'll say you're mirroring someone else's behavior. The twin flames show it a lot because basically if someone is ignoring you, you ignore them. That's basically what in that context mirroring means. You're actually just mirroring someone else's behavior to see if you're, how it would work. It doesn't really work this way, but how it is, when it's very simplistically boiled down, it's basically if you shift, then it'll shift. Now, I know a lot of times on this channel I say that. If we shift, it shifts. We can shift the reality. It doesn't necessarily mean the person in the reality will shift with it. Sometimes shifting the reality means that these people leave the reality. It doesn't all the time mean that they stay with us. You know, they stay in that reality. It doesn't mean that all the time. So sometimes when we shift, people will shift too, but sometimes they're not ready to shift as much as we want to shift the reality. That's why a lot of these realities start to close out. We're seeing a lot of realities close out this year. It's kind of a game-changing year as far as closing things out because of all of the completion codes that are coming in. There's so many things that are completed. This is the 4th year since we had the COVID year, which was a massive kind of global, pushed a lot of people into awakening. It shifted a lot of realities around. A lot of them never came back to the way they were originally. I don't know if anyone would say anything they did, how they were prior to the COVID realities and after, that they went back and did anything the same again. I'll guarantee you, when you look at your life before that and after that, something shifts. Either you don't go to the movies anymore, you don't go to this job anymore, you work from home more, you back with someone. No one went back into their realities the exact same way. Everyone had a shift in some way, and depending on where you were, it's how you shifted. So when we talk about the mirror realities, that's kind of what 2024 to me is, mirroring a lot of different realities that we've seen before. So if we've seen the reality before, why are we experiencing it again? And we're going to break down what it means to be in a mirroring reality. And there are a couple different ways you can look at it. There's going to be a million different ways you can look at it. We're going to break down a couple about why we have to go through it again. Why we have to mirror a reality we've already done. Why we have to look at it again. Why is it important? Now, you're going to find yourself on feeling different ways about when this happens to you. When a reality comes back around again, you're either going to find that you are experiencing it different than everyone else is experiencing it in your reality. Where if you watch, we talk a lot about energy reports on this channel, just to kind of reference them. I don't really get too much into doing them, but there's a lot of people who do them. But a lot of times you'll see they kind of make these sweeping statements about what's going on. You know, this is going on and everyone's going to be clearing this, or everyone's clearing this, everyone's going to be in the pits, everyone's going to be floating in the 5th dimension, or everyone's this, everyone's that. It's very general. And when you read them, it's kind of like reading the very general astrology. When you used to read them, I don't know if anyone gets magazines anymore, but back in the day, I'd always, when I was in the checkout line, I'd flip to the back of the magazines and read my horoscope to see what was going to go on in that month. What was going on in my sign, what was going on. And what you find is one shoe doesn't fit everybody. What someone else is going through, you weren't experiencing it that way. And it's the same thing. It's because no one's in the exact same place. No one has the exact same... No one has the exact same template. We do all link up to a collective template, but yours is going to be a little different. And You're going to find that there are people you share experiences with because they have a collective template that's got a similar overlay than yours. But you might begin bliss and magic and someone else is going through hell. Other people are going through this amazing bliss and magic and you're going through hell because they're in a fifth dimensional figuring out what it feels like to feel bliss and magic and floating around in that kind of energy. And your boots on the ground, eighth dimension, you're trying to get your realities in order. So it's going to affect you differently. It doesn't mean that when someone gives a report, energy report, that it's wrong, or when you used to read those old astrology horoscopes, they're wrong. Just we're not all going to experience it the same way. Mirroring dimensions are kind of the same. You're going to find that you might be in a mirror dimension where you're on the totally opposite side of something, whereas other people in the reality are experiencing it one way and you're experiencing something else. So you kind of are mirroring the person in front of you, but it's flipped, right? Whereas I can remember going through my day and being with the person at the end of the experience, they would have a totally different view on how the day went. You know, everything was awful, everything was this, everything was against them the entire day. Whereas I had a totally different experience, but we were in the same space, but in different realities. And that's when this starts to get tricky for aligning realities with people, you know, aligning relationships, and why so many go by the wayside. So many have to go because you can be in the same room with the person, but be in totally different galactic universes is how it starts to feel. Nothing is the same. You know, everything we're experiencing is different. It just doesn't feel the same. The cadence is off. It just doesn't have the smoothness. It's not easy like it used to be. A lot of our realities, when they come in, you know they're aligned because they come in kind of smooth and easy. That doesn't mean things stay aligned forever, and it doesn't mean they're aligned to our highest. It just means at that time they were aligned to something, and they came in. They either came in for us to clear programming, they came in to activate us to something else, they came in to show us something. That's why they come in. They're not going to last forever. They're always going to shift and change. Because we are, even in our human consciousness, shifting and changing. Even if it's such a small amount, we don't realize we do it. And a lot of times we will try to shift and change quicker when we're in our human aspect because we're looking for that next thing to get us going. You know, this is boring now. Now I want to go on and do something else. I want to go on and be with another person, or I want to get a new job. I want to move somewhere else because I'm bored here. I'm looking for the external to kind of activate my enthusiasm about things again. And our human will do that. And our human will continue to do that. And there is a time, even in your ascension and awakening, where we use the external to activate us. We just don't get attached to it. You know, we know it's fleeting. We know it's just there to activate, and then it's not supposed to be there anymore because we become attached to it. Now we got the same problem we had in our human realities. You know, nothing really feels permanent anymore. You know, everything's going to always continue to ebb and flow and continue to shift and change. And in our human realities, we can take the shifts and the change a little bit easier if it's not shifting and changing our core beliefs. It's not shifting and changing us out of the human realities, out of the human consciousness, out of the human dimensions in a sense. Because we're kind of shifting and changing within that dimension. You know, we're not shifting and changing into a whole new dimension where everything's backwards. So you're going to find yourself mirroring different people because you're in a different consciousness. You're technically in a different dimension. You know, someone else is experiencing a reality from a third dimension and you're experiencing it from a fifth dimension or a sixth dimension or seventh dimension. And it might seem funny, like, well, how come it's a different experience? Because we can feel the energetics of the reality. We can see what we're supposed to do to shift it. You know, we can see what we're supposed to do to make this better. We can see what maybe make this better is not the word I want to use, but we can see what we're supposed to do to add to this reality. I know I wanted to do a stream yesterday, but I had to go back. I spent all my time lately at the emergency vet, so I had to go back to the emergency vet yesterday. And every time I go, there's someone there I'm supposed to talk to. There's someone there I'm supposed to interact with. And yesterday it was this lady, and she had a little kitten that had been in a fight, and my cat's always in fights, so I'm always there getting him stitched up in one way or the other. And sometimes we have to reassess the reality. We look at what are we supposed to do here? We know we're supposed to be there. You know, we know we're supposed to lend something to this reality. We can feel that. We feel that, okay, if I was in my human consciousness, I would not even be paying any attention to this reality. I would interact with this differently. But because you can read the field and you're open to reading the field, you feel you're supposed to do something else. You're supposed to interact. Sometimes you might feel like I'm supposed to lend money to this situation if there's a money issue here. Or is it something else I can offer? Is it just being there with someone? Even if you don't say a word, you're just being there, and you can see the beauty in that. You can see the peace in that. Just being with a person when they need you to be with them. You can just kind of feel that. Other times, maybe it's information. I'm supposed to share information, which that was what I was doing yesterday. Because I am always working with my cat, who's always in fights, I was trying to, I look at a lot of homeopathic stuff online, and there's a reason I do it. There's a reason I have a cat like that that's always kind of getting in fights. So I could talk to someone about homeopathic remedies they can do for their animal who is also always in fights, and paying to go to the vet every freaking couple of days for this is a little expensive. So it was showing someone a different alternative, showing someone different things they could get into, different things. They didn't have to believe what they were being told. And a lot of times our human is going to listen to someone because we love a degree, right? We love to see everyone's credentials. We love to see what everyone can do. We love to see, what do you know? What do you know? What do you have? What makes you the expert on this? And as we go through higher consciousness, you realize they're not an expert on higher consciousness. They're not an expert on looking at something from a different consciousness. They're just an expert on that consciousness. And there might not even be an expert on that. But that's what they know, and that's what they are still linked up to. That consciousness, that is their information source. So when we have so much more information, we can look at the information being imparted on us, and you can kind of listen or kind of decide what feels like, okay, that maybe that's an avenue I want to go, maybe it's not. But opening someone up to different consciousness, different information, empowering them to go look at different things, empowering them to go look at different things they can do. You can see that you've made that connection with someone, and that's what you're supposed to do. It might be a 5-minute conversation, but like I said, you might even just hold a space for the person, which that is so tired and been said a zillion times. I'm going to hold a space. I'm holding a space. It's as played out as I'm going on a journey. That's another one you hear all the time. I'm on a journey. Where everyone's on a damn journey. Okay. We need to talk about anyone's journey. Everyone's on a journey. It depends on which journey you want to go on. But the same thing, holding space. But there's a difference between holding space and invading space. And our human wants to invade space. We want to hold the space. We want to make sure that we can hold the space for someone, so then they can grow into that space. So we talk a lot about, in our ascension journey, holding that space for someone. We talk a lot about going through something with a person, and maybe we just have to hold the space so they can expand how they need to expand, and give them the room to do that. And maybe the room to do that means we're not in their reality anymore. We're not invading their space. We're not trying to tweak their journey. We're not trying to influence their journey, because they have higher aspects too. It's not just, we're not the only ones that have those. We get in this sense where, okay, we're the only ones, right? We're the only ones that have this. We're the only ones that can do this. And that's bullshit. Everyone else does too. But when you're supposed to be at a certain place. And that is why I feel like when we're talking about that type of mirroring a reality, when you're talking about looking at how someone else interprets it and how you interpret it, and it's like the mirror opposite, because we can see what needs to be done. We can see our part in it. And our part is not to sit there. Our part was to be active in some way. Our part was to be out in, some years we're supposed to be out in the community. Other years it's supposed to be more internal. This year was one of my out in the community years. And your universe will give it to you however you're going to be able to do it. And for me, a lot of that's been going to the emergency vet. So that's been where I used to be going out to dinner or going out to different bars and stuff like that, and connecting with people there. I did that a lot years ago. And I did a lot of connecting there with people. Now it's kind of shifted for me, and where I'm at now, that's one place where it's like a portal in this place. We find portals in the weirdest places, but it's like, oh, it's like a big portal in here. Every time I come in this place, it's like I just can feel someone's gonna walk in here that I'm gonna connect with in some way, and it is how it always happens. So when we're looking at why, which a lot of us, our human wants to know why am I having such a different experience than someone else? Because you're interpreting the energy of the experience, and someone in a human consciousness cannot do that. They cannot consciously see why they're there. They think they're there for the human reasons. They think they're there for the physical thing. I'm here to do this. I'm here to go to this vet, and I'm here to get whatever my cat needs, and I want to go home. Well, that didn't even happen, you know. So then a human would say, okay, well, that was a mess. Fuck that. That was awful. Nothing happened. There was this, it was that. But then you can look at the real reason you were there, and it had nothing to do really with the animal you bought there. That was just how you got there. That was how you got there, how your universe got you there. Because you're not going to just drop by an emergency clinic with no vet, with a vet clinic without an animal. Something's got to go on somewhere to get you there. So that's the whole part that reality plays, and how it's constructed to get you to space. So you can read the field and see what needs to be done to shift this whole situation. You can see when a situation is going down, it's all immersed in vibrational, that human consciousness. Someone's just tweaking it a little bit, giving someone just something they can pursue that's not so entrenched in the human consciousness. I mean, I heard someone say once that, in our human consciousness, a doctor can prescribe us some medication, and we just take the medication. We don't research the medication. We just take it because the doctor gave it to us. Where if someone wants to give you a natural remedy, we're on the computer for 17 hours trying to figure out if we can take it or not, or what it is, and blah, blah, blah. We don't put that much scrutiny if a doctor gave us a prescription. But if it's something that didn't come from a doctor, because we have a more bias against that. Our human consciousness has a bias against where that information came from. Who gave us that information? Where was that at? What's the source of that? How can you give us an opinion? I always love when people want opinions, and then they want advice and they never take it, right? So after a while, you stop giving it. And I know that's one thing that'll close out a reality for me. If someone keeps asking for assistance on something and you keep giving it, and they keep doing the same thing over and over again, and you kind of know eventually it's time to close it out, until their reality gets tight enough where it starts to close in enough where they're like, you know what, maybe I'll ask for some assistance again, and maybe I'll go that route this time. But we were kind of the same way. So every time I see people do it, I'm like, I was the same way. We all went down the same roads. And that's why when you see it, you also understand that, everything you just said went on deaf ears, even if the person asked to hear it, because it's not gonna go anywhere. So we can be in that mirroring dimension with other people and know what needs to happen, know why we're really there, beyond the physical reason we think we're there for, the human reason we thought we went there for. And then we can mirror in another way, where we have a reality come back around, but it's different. Reality is different. It's technically mirroring something we've seen. A person might be back. It might be a complete situation again, the same way something played out before. But there's something different about it. It's mirroring it, but we're different. We're going through it a different way. We are, because we're going through it from a higher consciousness perspective. We flip the reality where we're on the different side of it, where we can see why we went through it the first time. All the cadences and clues that were embedded, because we were ingrained in our human consciousness, so we didn't understand. Why was I in this? Why did I have to go through this situation? Why am I now going through this situation all over again, but from a totally different consciousness? Why do I have to go back? Why am I revisiting? When people pop up, why do we have to revisit a reality? Why am I going back through it? And you'll find it in kind of like the 7th dimension will mirror the 5th dimension. The 8th dimension will mirror the 6th dimension. You'll start to see very similar patterns, even though we always are going to be working within 3 dimensions. Even though our consciousness can go higher, our day-to-day will be like 5, 6, 7, 7, 8, 9, depending on where you are in your process or what dimensions you've attained. not as a judgment on where everybody is, but just as a kind of a marker on, what's my year going to be like this year? Am I going to be in the beginning, we're kind of into one thing at a time, it feels like, because we can't see the nuances that are other things going on. We're kind of holding one consciousness, and next year, in another year maybe, I'll have boots on the ground and actually anchor in that consciousness and do that reality. Where in this year I'm doing one and anchoring in one. So we're kind of always going to be working to do that. It's the two-sided DNA. It's the two strands of DNA. One's the receiving the consciousness, holding the consciousness, then doing the reality maybe a year later or even longer than that. So we're always going to kind of be in different modes, but we can't see that then. So you almost get a flip of the reality to, one, clear out what didn't clear before. I mean, I've had a reality come back around for some really old stuff that happened back in like the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, that I never would have thought of revisiting until the whole situation started to unravel again. And I could see, for first I was like, why is this happening again? Why is this unraveling this way again? And then you can start to understand why. And there's more layers on top of that. It's going to be to clear out what you didn't clear before. Because there's going to be something left. Something that's still, because you cannot become the universe. You cannot anchor in, your divine feminine energy, your divine mother energy, if you have mommy issues. You can't anchor in, God energy, divine father energy, if you have father issues. You can't be the divine child if you still have children. What's the word I want to use? You still have issues with your childhood going on. We have to clear all that stuff out, and that's the part we don't like. We just want to go on to where this stuff is done. We don't want to have to go back and clear that stuff out. I just want to be this energy. I don't want to have to go out and clear this stuff out, but we have to go back and revisit. And we have to go back and be able to look at these realities and see, okay, what isn't clear? What have I not done? So I have a reality that's mirroring, and we can go through it through a different consciousness and still see what we're holding on to from that reality. If there was guilt in that reality, which we didn't know we still had, if we wanted a different ending. We talked a lot about closure. I don't think I did much of it last year, but one year I did a lot about closure and how it's really kind of, we're waiting for that physical act to close something out. And we're never going to get that because we're not energetically finished. So when we're energetically finished, we feel no need for anything. We don't need that physical act, whatever we think it would be to close it out. Because closure is just a myth. It keeps humans kind of tethering onto old realities, wanting some kind of closure that no matter what happens, you're not going to get it. It's kind of like, I went to a seminar once about compromise, and the guy had a great way of explaining it. Like, no one likes compromise. It's the biggest bullshit word. No one likes compromise. No one likes to compromise. No one wants to compromise. And even when people say, well, we compromised, all we did was agree for this moment, and now we're going to go our separate ways and get all our shit together. So next time we have to come together, if we're going to battle, we're going to have all our different shit together to fight again. No one wants to compromise. No one feels good about it. Everyone feels like they got slighted in a compromise. It's just how the human is always going to view a compromise. It's never going to be happy with it. It's always going to feel slighted in some way. And the same thing with closure. When our human wants closure, it's never going to get it because it's always going to feel like it didn't. We want a different ending. We want to rewrite it. We don't want, like, there's nothing profound this one person's going to say. There's all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I got closure. We have to resolve it energetically. And once we've played out the energy, we don't need the closure anymore because it's energetically closed. The physical stuff doesn't matter for us. But when we're still waiting for that physical thing to close it out, we're still very much in our human consciousness with that. We're not done. We want it to be different. We just kind of keep pushing it to get to that one thing we think we want. And then it's all going to be okay. And it never is. Because we just don't like the way it ended. We're not at peace with how it ended. That's with us. That's not about anything anyone else is going to do. It's our own energetically being finished with something. And that's why we'll see a flip sometimes. Sometimes we're energetically done with something, but the physical reality doesn't have that closure point. Whether it be, I didn't sign the divorce papers yet, or I didn't, I left that job before that project was finished. And I never got to complete the one thing I was there to do because energetically, the reality, we've done everything we were supposed to do on an energetic level there. We fulfilled our soul contracts. We had grown as much as we could grow. We've now outgrown the reality that physical thing was really not a reason we were there. It was just what got us there. That was not what we were there. That's why I always will say the physical act doesn't matter. It's the energetic act that matters. It's why the energy that brought us there. That's why we're there. It's not about who, what, when, where, why. None of that shit matters. It's how we felt about it, why we're there, the real reason we're there. And a lot of these realities get easier to navigate once we have the consciousness to look into why we're really here and what am I really here to do. So when these realities come back around, we're going to clear out, a lot of this old stuff. We're going to look at where we might have wanted a different ending, but maybe in this reality we can find a different way. I'm not going to go back and revisit. I'm revisiting it, but it's a different frequency of the reality. You've upgraded the reality to a different frequency where you can see different things that can be done. You can see maybe a different way, a different window you could have gone through that we couldn't see before. You can also see if you can't. And that's okay too. And this is how this reality is supposed to be. It's just for me to, it's going to also activate you to higher consciousness, it's going to activate you to a different level you haven't been at before. Like my reality came in and it's activated me more to my galactic core, which is not a process I've been through. I was going through, I thought, a different, more warrior energy this year. And now I'm getting galactic core, which is getting deeper into our galactic ascension, which comes after our, full body ascension. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on at one time. And we can start to see that too. It's always going to be elevating us further by allowing us to clear out this old stuff we didn't realize we still were holding on to. So when you're in a mirror and you're looking at it, you're going to find you're looking at it differently. It's not going to stress you out. In my experience, let me say that it didn't stress me out like it had when I went through this before. I found I had a very different reaction to it. And even though in the very beginning, a lot of times when they mirror in like this, and it can be it can shake us up a little bit. That's how we know we still have shit in there to clear that we didn't even realize. Some of these realities are so old when they come back, we didn't even realize we had anything going on with them. They could be in so many realities ago, we don't even really remember them. But they're still trapped in the body. Our body is still holding it somewhere. It's still vibrating it out. It's still, the frequency is still transmitting somewhere in there, whether it's guilt, whether because of how we had to end that reality, whether it's sadness, it's still in there somewhere. So our mind, our consciousness is doing one thing, but our body can still be transmitting out something totally different. And this gets us to that, and all of a sudden you remember that reality, it starts to come back to you, and you're like, okay, I remember this. I remember going through this. I remember when this was happening in real time 30 years ago. And what a complete upheaval it was in my life when it happened the first time. And now here we go again. So it can kind of knock you off. And sometimes our universe will throw these in to see if it can knock you off. The universe is always going to be trying to knock you off to see if you can hold your highest consciousness in that moment, no matter what the fuck goes on around you. I don't care how many, what it feels like grenades are getting lobbed at you. Can we hold the highest consciousness? Can we still hold ourselves to that highest consciousness, to our highest aspects? Are we going to go human and be all about ourselves? Are we going to look at the whole thing? Can we look at everyone else in their reality and see, okay, how is everyone else going to play into this? Can we hold our highest? And when we can hold our highest in that reality, that is when we know, okay, that didn't knock me off. Now look how far I've come. That would have really knocked me off. It might knock you off for a few hours. It might knock you off for a week. It might knock you off for a couple of days. It's okay. Don't beat yourself up about that. Just know that was the intention, to see what can get to you. If this is not going to get to you, now we're going to see, can this get to you? Can you hold it? And when we get to certain parts of our ascension, is can you hold it? Can we now introduce all this other stuff? We're going to bring up some older stuff now. And we get in these flips, these flops, and we have to really be able to look at it and look at the whole thing and go, okay, why am I here again? What's going on? And not judge you're in it again. Remember, it's just a deeper part of it. It goes back into my whole goal, and this is also for me tied into my galactic core activation. You're just deeper into it. It's something in the body that was trapped in there. It had to come out, that had to do with this situation, so we're going to go through it again. So mirroring realities are going to be something we're going to see a lot more of. And sometimes we might not even identify it right away. You know, you might feel, because our memories go of our older realities. You know, when I look at something that happened 30, 40 years ago for me, you don't even remember. I can't remember a video I did 2 weeks ago. I can look at a title of it and I couldn't tell you one thing I said in the video. I'd have to listen to it again. I don't even remember it. I don't remember any of the points I made. And that happens all the time, because you in that moment it was coming through and it was important to say. And then, 3 weeks later, I might look at it and it's not even true anymore. That's kind of that's why we get tripped up by these older versions of ourselves and these older, the tricky part about the mirror dimensions is when it comes in, we don't want to revert back to that old programming, because now we're different. We have to hold ourselves to our new frequency, our new consciousness, and go through that reality in what we can attain in that moment and hold it through that reality, because that's the point. That's why we're here. That's why our universe is giving it back, to clear out all that stuff that's still trapped in there. Because we can have these cellular memories about this stuff, and none of those memories even matter. They're more like just a reference. I talk about that sometimes when we talk about people and people coming back. And we're like, okay, I can see, I remember this person coming back in again, and now they're the same, and blah, blah, blah. You can't expect the same thing. We don't ever want to expect the same ending. We kind of a reference point of what has happened in the past, but we don't expect it to go the same way. Mirroring realities are they can kind of really hit us deep a lot of times, because we are so deep in and we unearth so much of this old stuff, that our old human stuff, we didn't want to get into our multidimensional stuff, and in this talk, maybe the next one I'll do, we'll talk more about that, but it unearths it, and we're like, wow, I didn't even know I even carried anything about that anymore. I guess it happened, but I didn't even think I cleared that. And some of my clearing, and all the clearings I've gone through, I would have thought that would have not had to have a complete repeat of it to go through it again. But it will happen. It will happen, because our body's still holding it. And as long as our body's transmitting that out, we have that confusion and what our higher consciousness is trying to accomplish and what our body is transmitting out. That's why the body consciousness is so important, because that's how you shift to reality, through your body's consciousness, raising the vibration of our body, clearing out the body of these old programming, these old programs, these old realities, and what we've held on to with those old realities. It's so important to clear the body of that stuff. That's what raises the body's vibration. That's what brings in, kind of teleports us in a way. I never use that word, but teleports us into a new reality, because our body can now hold the vibration and the reality now forms around us. It's no longer trapped, So when you're in these mirrors, just know you're dealing with trapped stuff that we didn't even know we had in there. And it might not be the exact same people, it might just be the situation, but the person's different. If it's about an animal, the animal's different. The job's different. But it's so similar. And in our human realities, we would kind of go through these kind of back to back to back to back to back. And I'm going to say that's a little different. Where you say, oh, I'm always in the same loop and it keeps repeating. That's different, because when we're in our human realities and we're going through these loops, we're repeating them because we never let the realities reset. We never clear the shit out. We go from one to the other. We go from one external thing to the next external thing. Oh, I broke up with my boyfriend. Now I'm going to go get a new one. Well, I ended up the same place again. Let me jump frog somewhere else. I hated this job. I'm going to move to the next one. Now this one ended up eventually, maybe 2-3 years later, in the same fucking place the old one did. I'm going to go to another one. We don't give the reality time to reset. We don't give our body a chance to clear everything regarding that old reality to then enter into a new one. Our human won't do that. It doesn't have the patience for it. It doesn't have the time for that. It doesn't want to do that. It feels like it's wasting time just sitting there letting something clear. And it can take years sometimes in between a reality, months to clear a certain port, to be able to get to something different. So it's a little different when we're doing it from our human consciousness. And higher consciousness, we wait for the realities to come back around, and they can come back around 30, 40 years later. It's also the end of the karmic cycle for that reality. Any karma recreated from what we did will now come back for us to reverse that. Can we reverse that karma from what we had done before? Can we now clear this off the books? Can we now get rid of this too, because we cannot take this with us. Remember, we cannot become the universe if we're holding on to any of this old stuff. That is why all these situations start to come up. So when you see everyone talking about ascension and awakening, and everyone's in bliss and magic is beautiful, there are parts of it when you're coming through that feel like that. And there's a lot of it that does not feel like that. Because when you're in the boots on the ground working through all this stuff and clearing all this stuff, it doesn't feel great. It feels great when we get through it, but when we're in the middle of it, it doesn't feel great. So we want to be aware of where we are and not beat ourselves up for where we're not yet and having to go through these things again. We're going through them because we keep going deeper and deeper in, and now we've got to this. Now we've got to mirroring these dimensions, and it's a sign of how far we've come. We should never look at it as a punishment, like we're in a loop cycle of doing the same thing again. It is different, and it comes in for a different reason, and it's different because we can see the energetics behind it. Whereas in our human consciousness, we had not gained that access. So that's why we just see it so different. We have more access to what's really going on, the undercurrent of everything, the creation of everything, because we created the whole thing, and now we can see why we did. All right, I do want to check, I'm going to check questions really quick, and then, okay, I'm good. So I think I'm going to end that today, and I will see everyone next time.